Ladies and gents, buckle up because we've got Jon Bond in the house, the mad scientist of marketing. This genius reinvented the ad game at Kishbaum, Bond and Partners, and now he's cooking up chaos at Weightless. Imagine pitching a cookieless solution to a room full of cookie addicts. That's Jon's Tuesday. He's got more tales than a pirate's treasure chest, and today, he's spilling them all. Welcome to the Adotat Show, where we don't just scratch the surface, we drill down to the core. Let's get started.
Deserve to win when it matters most. Facing multi-billion-dollar bet the company litigation? No problem. That's why we're here. Troutman Amin, LLP is a true legal powerhouse.
Well, welcome to the Adotat Show. Today we're not just thrilled, we're downright giddy to have the marketing maverick himself, Jon Bond. This guy is the brains behind Kishbaum and Bond and Partners, the legendary ad agency that redefined the game. Now he's the visionary force at Weightless, pushing boundaries and shaking up the status quo. Jon's got more industry insights than we have time to cover, and stories that'll make you laugh, gasp, and question everything you knew about marketing. Buckle up, folks. This ride through Jon's mind is going to be wild, irreverent, and absolutely unforgettable. So, Jon, how's it going today, and what's the most absurd, head-scratching thing that happened to you recently?
That's a great question. There's so many. Let's just take today. I'm on the board of a cookieless AI media company that's public. They are asked to pitch. And of course, all the incumbents are cookie-based. So they're using cookies to determine which wins, the cookies or the cookieless solution, except they don't have cookies. So it's going to have them, their score is going to be 0. So that was kind of dumb. I'll keep names out of it to protect the guilty.
So how are you juggling the madness?
What it does say is
Go ahead.
How attached people are to the past,
right,
to what they know how to do, and how threatened they are by anything new. That's really the moral.
So you really think people are really scared of this, the cookie or the cookieless transformation? The
I think they're
apocalypse?
scared, yes, because they've spent years honing a particular skill, and now to be told that skill is largely invalid, you have to learn a whole new game. That's not attractive to most people. That's why my hiring trick was to find people when I was in New York, the agency was in New York, that had or would move to New York from somewhere really far away, where they knew no one. From Brazil or Montana or whatever, because those are people that are open to new things, and with things changing as fast as they are.
Are you still in New York?
I'm in LA right now.
You miss New York?
Some days.
So is there any side projects you're completely geeking out over? Maybe something that only a true enthusiast would appreciate?
Let's see. That's a very good question. I have a new book I just turned in to Columbia University Press. It has a lot of things in it. You know, one of my little peeves is you go to these marketing conferences and basically everyone says the same thing. Or there's the word for the year. You know, last year the word was TikTok. The year before that it was NFT. And this year it's AI, which is different because that's going to be the word for the next forever. But that's a whole different story. And so what I like to do when I do anything is actually come up with things that people haven't heard before 30 times. So that's my strong suit and my passion.
So speaking of AI and Weightless, what's the big, hairy, audacious goal with these new projects? Are we talking a moonshot dreams here, and the kind that makes you slightly nervous to even say out loud?
Wait, I didn't understand the question, sir.
Sorry. What's cooking with your latest project at Weight Loss? At Weightless. Sorry. Weight loss is something else.
Let's see. What is something that I'm interested in? You know, one of the issues, which is why we started this entity, Weightless, the opposite of Weightless, which is, you know, carrying around all this baggage, and the amount of baggage that everyone's carrying around in terms of, you know, extra process, all of these people, all the mess of the average client has 17 agencies, you know, and how do you streamline it just to get to the good stuff as fast as possible and spend the money on media or on things that matter versus this, huge monster that most people are managing. I think that's interesting. Like the more people involved, the worse the outcome, not the better the outcome.
Tired of ads that make you want to gouge your eyes out? So are we. At Origin, we've remastered TV advertising to actually capture your attention and deliver real results. Ditch the same old, and elevate your brand with dynamic, captivating ad experiences. Expect better, expect Origin.
Can you explain exactly what Weightless does?
Yeah, so basically what we do is there's 4 places to go to get something done in marketing, right? There's you hire someone full-time, contract labor, or outside agencies and tech tools. And within each of those 4, there's hundreds of options. So if you manage that matrix to kind of create the most efficient marketing machine you can, how do you put that thing together? And then it changes every month depending on what's happening with the business and what's going up and what's going down and budgets. So it's really a huge undertaking to create that. And you got to have where all the bodies are buried. You got to know 10 ways to do everything. So I find that fun, and especially for emerging brands who can't afford to do it anywhere close to the traditional way. I mean, this works for the big traditional brands too, but they're much harder to deal with because they're so vested in the existing paradigm.
Well, was there a light bulb moment that sparked the creation of Weightless?
Yeah. It's called being in the same meeting over and over and over and over again for years. And that meeting is, wow, we got all the stuff we have to do. We don't have any more money to do it. We got less money. How do we do that? Right? It's that meeting over and over. So then I thought, that would be a good issue to address for a company.
Do you think the agency holding companies are going to have something to say about this? That's not good?
Well, that's a great question because, again, they're vested at the moment in selling hours, selling bodies, right? When they switch to selling deliverables or outcomes, then fewer people is better, right?
Right, that's a great point.
Right? And I think for the next 18 months, AI is going to be the main enabler of how to get a lot done with fewer bodies. And I think agencies using AI are going to make a lot of money for the next 18 months until everyone figures out that, oh, wait, if you do this with AI, it's a lot cheaper and faster, and then the party might be over. And that tends to be what happened. That's what happened with programmatic. I mean, early days of programmatic, I was involved in it. I think our margins were 72%. Now, obviously, that didn't last.
So what is your long-term vision for Weightless? Are we talking global takeover or something a bit more modest, like just reshaping the entire industry?
I obviously have to get out there and get more PR. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
So how are you going to measure success? Is it all about metrics, gut feelings, or a mix of both?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. My question is just right now, if I hired a few people and I'm doing this for some brands, and how do I scale it? So that's what I have to figure out. I had this agency, as you know, we had 0 to 500 people, no funding, and no acquisitions. And
right.
Being CEO of something like that is a 24/7 job. You can only do that for so many years. And so I don't know that I want to do that anymore.
So speaking of your career, looking back, what do you consider the most pivotal moment in your career? And how did that moment change your approach to work? Was it a total game changer or just a minor tweak that made all the difference?
It's a good question. It's hard to come up with one. But I think, one day, before I started the agency, we were talking about this new campaign we were working on, and somebody said, what we have to do is get people talking about it. And that really stuck with me, that, wait a second, we're running ads, but we really are trying to get word of mouth. And that was before influencers and all that sort of thing. And I started working on that. And when we started the agency, our whole thing was generating word of mouth. And I still think that's the objective, is to get something out there in the ether where people talk about it, and it's not the advertiser talking directly to the consumer or the user. And I still think that's the essence of how marketing really works and how brands are really built.
So what hard-earned lessons did you take away from that experience?
What
Hard-earned lessons did you take away from that experience?
from the agency?
Yeah.
I think
Well, let's go this. Were there any key challenges you faced at KBP that made you want to pull your hair out?
I always said, when you tell stories to people about your business career, nobody, it's not entertaining to say how great everything was and how great you are. What's funny is when things blow up,
Right.
And depending on how serious the mistake was or the disaster, the worse it was, the longer it takes to be funny. So I had this San Francisco office in the .com era, and it got bigger and bigger, of course, because it was .com, and took this huge space south of Market in an area that was just about to be gentrified, quotes. Well, then the whole thing crashed and it never got gentrified, and I knew we were screwed one day. We had this conference room that faced, that you could see from the street. It was clear. When I'm in a meeting in the conference room and this kind of homeless guy walks up to the glass, and all of a sudden a wall of yellow spraying against the conference room.
Right.
And I went, yeah, we're screwed. Maybe we can sell.
And he wasn't an employee, right?
I don't think so. Anyway.
So what are you most proud of your time at KBP? Time to brag a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm most proud of is something that I think is missing in the agency world today, in most cases, which is culture. The people we had were incredible. They're all running different companies all over the place. There's so many stars that came out of that everywhere. And, even today, if there was a reunion event, or God forbid somebody died or something, there'd be something on Facebook. There'd be 150 people at a bar down the street, literally tomorrow, because most people said, hey, that was, the most important experience I had, best place I ever worked. And now, in retrospect, I think about what the culture was, and I think what it was acceptance. No matter who you were in high school or wherever, if you were straight or you're gay or you're this or you're that or whatever you were, all of a sudden you came to work and you were accepted, and you didn't have to have like a work personality and a non-work personality, and that attracted just this incredible amounts of talent that felt differently than they'd ever felt.
Do you think that was innovative at the time?
Yeah, totally innovative. Whereas most agencies were kind of rigid, and people wearing suits and ties, and then they were themselves after work. In this case, right, they were themselves at work, and they didn't want to go home because that was more fun than their regular life. So that I think was the key to the agency's success.
So what lasting impact do you think it had on the industry?
I think there were, we had a lot of innovations. We did the first pop-up store. The whole thing of challenging the traditional, run some TV commercials and some print ads, and maybe that isn't the way to go. But, at that point, the people that challenged that, they were like direct marketing agencies. They didn't have prestige. We challenged the status quo, but we were cooler than the status quo. And I think that has lasted to today. It's still, that whole idea really we kind of created.
Right. So in 2004, you sold 60% of the stake of Kishbaum, Bond & Partners to MDC Partners. And what were your main considerations during the sale? Was it about the big bucks, freedom, or something else?
Yeah, I think we wanted the money. We'd all been working that really hard for a long time, that's the honest answer. I don't know why people go, this, I want to be, they want the money.
So how did the sale affect the company's vibe and operations? Did anything change?
Nothing changed while we were there. once our deals ran out,
Right.
and we went on to do other things, first of all, creative agencies are very fragile. Media agencies are much less fragile. They're much easier to institutionalize that. But a creative agency it is a very delicate beast. People they put in after that were culturally, they might have been smart and talented, but culturally, they couldn't have been more opposite. So basically, destroyed the entire culture and commoditized the agency. And then it ended up getting merged into some other agency.
Right.
So it was a shame. On the other hand, it's very hard to maintain that kind of agency into the next generation. Same thing happened with Crispin Porter. That was our sister agency. They had 900 people. And then after all the partners cashed out and left, and they had 20 people. That's pretty shocking.
If you could do it all again, what would you change?
I wouldn't sell it.
Really? You wouldn't sell? Why is that?
Because I think it could have been even more than it was. Had I might have gotten capital to invest or maybe take some off the table, but I wouldn't have given up control of it. I think it could have done even a lot more in the industry than what it did.
But you also sold a company to Publicis. How did that influence you?
Yeah.
Just like 4 years later, I remember, right?
Oh, no, like 2 years later.
Yeah, almost
2 years
immediately.
later. Maybe less.
Would you have sold that company also?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's different.
You weren't as attached.
Yeah, and that was like, I think that those guys started the company to sell it. That's different. I don't know that it was designed to change the world or anything. So, yeah, that's a whole different animal.
And then I see you went into social media. You became the CEO of Big Fuel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the agency we sold.
Oh, that's the one you sold.
Yeah.
So how did leading a social media agency differ from your previous gigs? Was it like herding cats or more like riding a roller coaster?
It's like herding cats. So that agency went from 30 people to 180 people in a year. It was great. Right. You can't snap your fingers and have culture instantly. That takes some time. You can have growth, but great company always has a great culture. It's like I sent my kids to this cool private school that opened in New York called Avenues, and we were the first people to go there, and it was great, and they had the new building and all this slick presentations and all that. And then when my kids started, I went, school's not that good because you can't snap your fingers and have culture. So a school or an ad agency, those sort of entities are driven by people and by culture. We don't have a piece of software. We don't have Google search everyone's relying on that generates money. It's all from people and how people interact with each other.
So what's the most legendary and innovative campaign you've been a part of, and what made him successful?
Couple of them. The original Snapple campaign, the letters campaign with the Wendy the Snapple lady, was the first to do so many things. We found people just loved Snapple because they felt it was authentic and not perfect, and the sort of cheesy, ugly packaging, which everyone wanted to change. And then we went, no, it's better that way. It looks like people are just making it in their basement, which wasn't that far from the truth. And then we found these letters that people wrote, these incredible letters to the brand that you'd never write to Coke or Pepsi. This woman, Wendy, who was a secretary, would answer a lot of them. And we said, you know what? We'll just answer the letters on TV. Well, who's going to answer the letters? Wendy.
Right.
That's how it came about. So everything that we did was true. All those letters that people wrote. And even if the scenario didn't play out perfectly, we still ran it. Like, I remember, this happened a few times, a woman wrote, I have my dog Shane loves Snapple. Every time I open a Snapple, the dog comes running. We went there to Indianapolis and pointed a camera at the dog and at her, and the dog just sat. She opened 500 bottles. The dog just sat there, and we ran that.
Wow. Yeah, I remember. So it was like 95. I think it was 20 years old. I found a Snapple bottle myself, and it said it was kosher. And I looked at the ingredients; it wasn't kosher. So I called up Snapple, and they gave me about 5 years worth of free Snapple certificates. So I just used those for years and got free Snapple. That's how I became a loyal Snapple person. How do you? What could we learn from brand loyalty in that?
Well,
in today's time,
let's compare it to New Coke that launched somewhere around then. Actually, before then.
One of the most the biggest disasters of branding ever.
Right. Well, first of all, so they found something that tastes a little bit better. Big deal. That doesn't make it Coke. Like, that's what really matters. It's, so they missed the emotional part. And then once they launched it, they never admitted they made a mistake. They should have just pulled it and go, we were wrong. You guys are right.
Right.
They wouldn't do that. Then they had New Coke and Old Coke for a while. It was so dumb. So Snapple, what Snapple taught us is it's more important to be human than perfect. People don't want perfect. You don't have to be perfect, because they're not perfect. So I'll never forget, I remember we were doing some research once, a focus group or something, and somebody said, Snapple's like that little lost dog that's wet that shows up on your doorstep, and we felt we have to take care of it so Coke and Pepsi don't put it out of business. I just thought that was genius. Genius, So, I think in all the things we did about, we called it 100% natural marketing. The brand had been built over decades, just from people finding it and, kind of getting attached to it. And they had to roll out really fast nationally because of Coke and Pepsi coming out with their competitors, Fruitopia, if you remember that. So we go, well, how do we simulate word of mouth so that doesn't look like it's this commercial thing? And then we said, you know what? The answer is this thing we're going to call 100% natural marketing. It's marketing that looks like it's not marketing. It looks organic. And that was before there was even a concept of organic versus paid, And I still think to this day that almost all successful marketing doesn't appear to be marketing. Look at Small Business Saturday that Amex puts on every year, right?
Right.
It's like a friggin' holiday. It's incredible. Look at Gatorade on the sidelines of NFL games where people are drinking from the cups and pour it on the head of the coach when they're winning. Yeah, they're paying to place it there, but it doesn't appear to be marketing. So
it's like the military at NFL games, probably the biggest example. People are not aware the military pays to have their recruiting commercial basically on NFL games. It's not patriotic. It's a paid placement, but everyone thinks it's this beautiful patriotic thing, which it is, but it's also a paid placement for the military.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Exactly. Right. So
how do you view the evolution of marketing from traditional methods to the digital age? And what was the biggest change you've seen?
I think where marketing's going is, if you look at the early days of marketing in the 19th century, marketing was about fooling people, right? And there were no regulations about, you could put anything in the product you wanted and let the buyer beware, right? And in fact, Coca-Cola had cocaine in it.
I was about to say that. I would say original Coke had cocaine, since we brought that up.
But what you might not know is that at one point, when they took the cocaine out, the government sued Coke for false advertising because it
still said Coke.
It said it's
Coca-Cola.
Coca, but there were no coca leaf tracks in it. So they sued them for not having cocaine. Don't you love that? But they didn't know cocaine was that bad for you back then. Anyway, so it's moved from that to where it's going is marketing as a valued service that you'd almost pay to get. Which I go back to Small Business Saturday or all kinds of examples of, serving versus selling. People you serve, you buy more from them than people who are trying to sell you. Your financial advisor is supposed to tell you what's going to.
So how consumer behaviors shifted? How have consumer behaviors with the rise of digital marketing? Are we more connected or more distracted?
We're more distracted. Look, there's I always say it's like marketing to goldfish, right? 8 or 9 second attention span. Goldfish have, they can only remember something for 8 or 9 seconds. then they have to see it all over again. It's kind of like we're marketing to goldfish. One of the implications of that to me is that the visual, when I got into the business, it was the words, it was the tagline. Now, a lot of brands don't even have the taglines, and it's more graphic because the images travel at, the speed of light. Words travel as fast as your brain can read and process. So with a short attention span world, the writer was king. I think it's not even the art director, it's the designer, someone that can make something instantly. Look at Target, which was one of our clients. The iconic Target logo and the way that's used is...
So what are your thoughts on the growing importance of data science and marketing? And how does Weightless weave data science into its strategies without turning into robots?
Data science. Well, it's such a complicated topic to address. A lot of data science, like everything, is pretty lousy. It skirts on the surface. The key is, one of the keys is to get to real attribution. And if something doesn't get attribution, then it's not valued, and then it's discarded in our world.
Right.
So being able to, especially on the brand side, measure the impact of, let's say, brand to the extent that the CEO and CFO nod their head and go, yeah, that's real. Not analytics that appeal to marketing people, but the test is if they appeal to Wall Street people, right? That's that's where the rubber meets the road. So some of the things that appeal to Wall Street people are bottom of the funnel, short-term stuff. That doesn't mean that everything else has no value, right? So for example, if you run a TV spot, 2 TV spots run, one in crappy inventory and one in premium inventory, and you measure it for a week and the crappy one wins. But funny thing is, if you keep measuring the lift over 90 days, the one that's higher quality because it's embedded in your memory surpasses the crap, right? So that's a simple example of better analytics and creating a better result. But it's so important today, all of that stuff, and most of what's done is very superficial and not very insightful.
Do you have any killer examples of data-driven decisions at Weightless?
Yeah, let's see, what can I tell you? We've done, we had a interesting project in the travel space where in travel, the inventory is the issue, right? It is the inventory atrophies. And, your airline seat the day of the flight, right, is worth a lot less than 2 months before. So they're trying to figure out the pricing and everything else. And this was for a cruise line. And we had a great system of how to manage what they do normally is just drop the price, right, at a certain point. But we were able to show that, say they dropped the price from $3,000 to $2,000, right? So that's $1,000 they gave up. But we said, if you are able to spend an extra $500 targeting people that are used to paying premium to get a last-minute berth on the cruise line, and we were found that we can get a lot of those people for $500 versus $1,000, right? That was an interesting piece of data science that combines a number of elements, right, to figure out how to optimize the inventory. I was proud of another one. Oh, I have another good one for you. Victoria's Secret, right? So Victoria's Secret, you go to fourth quarter holiday season and they all spend a lot of money over the holidays in that world. But here's a question, right? So they spend $100 million and they did $1 billion in sales, right? So they got $10 for every dollar. Or did they? Well, they didn't, and here's why. There's this thing that happens called Christmas. And Christmas generates, $900 million. Even if you did nothing, this thing called Christmas generates huge amounts of revenue. So you're really going to measure the incremental gain above Christmas, right? So instead of starting at 0, you're already starting at, let's say, 900 million, right? So maybe you spent 100 million, you got 100 million back. You lost money because of the cost of goods sold. Anyway, that's a really interesting idea. So data science that is really insightful and tells you how the world really works is much more interesting. Or here's another data science fact that I like, which is top down versus bottom up. So we do these segments. There's 5 segments. There's Jane, and she's the Midwest housewife who da 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 da. And then there's Jim, and he's the do-it-yourself. And they go through these segments, right? And then you use the segments, and they don't really work all that. Okay, we did an ad for Jane and one for Jim, and that's top down. Bottom up is, I don't know what the segments are. We're going to try a bazillion things in a bazillion places, and then we'll see what bubbles up. And what bubbles up are 1,000 micro segments of, on Tuesday at 9, when it rains, we sell a lot of rain slickers or whatever the heck it is, right? And the bottom up always outperforms the top down. I find that interesting.
So what's the reason for the top down? What's the big failure?
The top down seems logical. No one ever argues.
Well, it's easy. It's easier. You can market it. You can say this is a segment to left-handed jugglers.
Exactly. Look, it's why the big hedge funds that do the trading, the high-speed trading, it's how they all work. They go, when this happens and this happens, then we do this. I don't even know why. It's just that IBM goes up when it rains on a Tuesday night. God knows why. Who cares? It does. And they have thousands of little opportunities that pop up, as opposed to the big, all-encompassing thing, right, which is top down. Just because the numbers, when you have thousands of shots, right, you're gonna find more ways to hit a bullseye than when you only have 6 and prefabricated. The 5 or 6 that are prefabricated, it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean that those perform in the real world, right? So I find that interesting.
Moving on, where are you from, and what's your origin story? What was your childhood like? Any funny or formative moments that shaped who you are?
Yeah, my family was like a Woody Allen movie, Upper West Side. My father was an actor. He was in 40 movies, all kinds of famous movies. He was the, judge in 12 Angry Men. He was in The Godfather. Oh, wow. He was in Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway and the play with Marlon Brando. And my mother
That'd be fun growing up.
Psychoanalyst, and then she became a writer and wrote 27 books all about powerful women, all that kind of funky stuff. So yeah, kind of creative, offbeat upbringing. And a lot of good stories in there if you'd ever...
Who influenced you the most growing up? Give us the backstory.
I think my mother did, because she was all so supportive, like whatever you want to be, But back then, going into business and making money was anathema, right, culturally, to where I grew up, which had a lot of very left people. So I had to get over that, and, I had this job one summer in college as a messenger, which is the worst job in New York. And
bike messenger, or
not even.
You had to walk it.
Okay. And I'd go deliver these packages to these ad agencies, good-looking people hanging out. And, what is this? It's an ad agency. I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So that's how I got involved in it.
Any big city lessons?
Big city lessons. Let's see. One time I was delivering this package where you didn't want to get the call was at the end of the day to the New York Post, which was 210 South Street before South Street Seaport. And that's when you have people with guns, okay, yeah, can take the package and take my money and go ahead.
That was a tough neighborhood then, the South Street
Seaport.
Seaport.
You didn't want to get the New York Post call at the end of the day.
Right.
That's what I remember about the messenger job.
Do you remember your favorite restaurant when you were a kid?
The Madison Deli, because my mother had a charge card there.
Oh wow! And your favorite thing to order?
Like corned beef, and the 7-layer cake was amazing. I have no idea.
I'm having those.
That was fantastic.
That brings back memories.
Oh yeah.
So, what's the hardest challenge you've had to overcome in your life, and how did you tackle this challenge without losing your cool?
Without losing my what?
Cool.
Oh. Let's see. Teenage girls are they're not for amateurs. There's some crazy hormone that hits at a certain age when they go from being sweet, nice little girls to
right. And when was this challenge?
It's just ending. Now they're 18 and 20. So
raising kids has been one of your hardest challenge. So who did you lean on for support during this tough time?
That's a good question, because I think my wife at the time was perplexed by the whole thing, because she grew up in a kind of very disciplined Midwestern family. So, these kind of crazy creative kids were, But look, those are, they're not a problem to themselves, just to everyone around them. So they'll be fine. They're hugely talented actors, singer-songwriter. They've been on Broadway and all kinds of things like that.
They grow up, though. Mine just started Harvard Medical School this year. So eventually grow up. Thank you.
Congrats.
So, what did you learn about yourself through this ordeal?
What
did you learn about yourself through having teenage daughters?
Patience. I think that's a good question. I think being able to, instead of just get mad, to express how things make you feel, and you gotta make yourself vulnerable in order to get people to pay attention to you. Otherwise it's like Israel Palestine, right? Which, by the way, I have a huge project in this other company I've been interested in called Heart Monitors. That is, we're measuring all the feelings associated with the Israeli-Palestine conflict, based on the idea that it's feelings that matter, not facts. And
they say most people are not influenced by hard facts. They'll just double down.
No,
it's a bunker personality, but when they're hit with appeal to emotion, they're more likely to change.
But the pro-Palestine side gets this.
Right.
Doesn't get it.
I've said this. The Israelis argue these little facts, and I don't want to get too much into the political side, but they tend to argue little facts like, no, that's not exactly what happened. It happened just like that, and no one really cares. And they put it on there, and they go, but that is also the Israeli mentality. It's about being right.
Totally, the worst marketers on the planet. So anyway, I think David Ogilvy. Because I read his book, and that's how I got interested in advertising.
How do you think David would look at today's marketing empires?
Good question. I think he'd like the data-driven approach.
Right.
So I think that he would buy off on. I think he would be disappointed at the lack of fluency regarding ideas. And very few campaigns, a lot of one-off things, which is a lack of discipline. So the measurement is good, but the art of really what is a good idea has definitely been declined.
Besides David Ogilvy, who is one person that you admire the most, alive or dead?
I would say Cincinnatus, because it was a Roman emperor, because he was a farmer, and then there was a crisis in Rome, and then they put him in as emperor, and then once the crisis passed, He voluntarily stepped down and went back to being a farmer, which reminds me of like George Washington, people that really put the entity ahead of their own personal, which I think is in short supply today. And it's one of the reasons that I don't have any interest in politics, because politicians care about themselves, their party, and the country third, and the exact wrong order.
If you could meet Cincinnatus, what's the one burning question you ask him?
It's a good question. I'd say why. Why? Why are you willing to give up this power? That is what Julius Caesar, right, wanted to be emperor for life. The opposite, right? I'd love some insight into how his mind worked. That and what his background was, and how he came to a place where he would do that. But you think about it, so did George Washington, right? He didn't run for re-election.
Right. He's also said he didn't want to be king. Yeah. I feel like some people could learn something from that.
Definitely.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the big milestones you're aiming to hit by then?
I'd like to get my golf handicap under 10. I don't think I could do that with a job. So, I have to figure that out.
So your big milestone's eventually to retire?
No, I'm never going to retire, but I want to do like only things I really care about doing.
What legacy are you looking for in building?
I have this documentary I'd like to do called Advertising, that really traces the whole beginning all the way to the future, which I think no one's ever done. That would be that'd be a great project if I get someone to write a check for $500,000, make it a little easier to do.
So interesting. Sean Black, who you probably know from the Gray Days, who's at Daily Motion now. He actually wants to do the same thing.
Oh, connect me. I don't know if I do know him.
Yeah, he was one of the people who started Gray, and Beyond Entertainment back in the day.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I'll introduce you.
Great.
So last but not least, I'd like to ask people if you could send yourself a time-traveling text message back in the past when you started, what is something you would tell yourself? And it can't be stock tips.
Good question. I tell myself personal or business?
It's up to you.
Personal, that would be get a prenup. And business, I would say business, a little more confidence and a little less desperation about this week and this month and having a lot.
Right.
All right, folks, that's a wrap on today's episode with the marketing mad scientist, Jon Bond. But before we sign off, let's give a hearty and irreverent shout out to our fantastic sponsors who keep this show running smoother than a Swiss watch. First up, Troutman Amin LLP. These legal gladiators aren't just any law firm. They're your go-to warriors for complex litigation, compliance issues, and all things TCPA. Whether you're battling multi-billion-dollar lawsuits or navigating the tricky waters of compliance, Troutman Amin LLP is your Excalibur in the courtroom. They're not just lawyers. They're your personal knights in shining armor. Next, a big thanks to Origin. These digital sorcerers have reinvented TV advertising with their zero-code CTV ad formats. They turn the biggest screen in your living room into a dynamic, captivating experience that smacks viewers out of their distraction-induced comas. From elevating attention spans by 883% to boosting store visits by 41%, Origin makes sure your brand doesn't just float, it soars. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday.